We're back with Jim Bullard of the St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank talking about monetary policy and the economy. And Jim, welcome to foxbusiness.com this time. We were talking about the pace of rate hikes for 2017, and you were talking about you're at 1, and some of your colleagues and Chair Yellen are talking about potentially 3 for this year. In a speech last week, you said, okay, we can remove policy accommodation by looking at the balance sheet, the $4 trillion plus in bonds that the Fed currently holds that acquired during the financial crisis to help stimulate the economy. What's your proposal on that?
Well, what we're doing right now is we've got the short rate scheduled to move up. We have made the 2 moves over the last 2 years and scheduled to go higher. So that's putting upward pressure on the short end of the yield curve. But the balance sheet, the large balance sheet, is putting downward pressure on the middle and long end of the yield curve. So that doesn't sound quite right to me. I think you should be allowing all rates to go up simultaneously. Otherwise, you're kind of putting inversion pressure on the yield curve. And so I think that needs to be re-examined and thought about a little bit. I don't think there's anything real imminent about that, but I think it's time to reevaluate the current strategy.
And this would be to start selling those bonds off or stop reinvesting the proceeds?
I wouldn't say selling, but we could allow runoff in the portfolio, and that would start to shrink the size of the balance sheet from the very high levels that it's at today. You know, one thing I'll say about this, I don't think anybody's saying it should be $4.5 trillion sort of longer term. People think it should be lower than that, and so we could get going in that direction at a moderate pace, and that would be a fine thing to do. And that would also give us some scope for future action should we need it, should we get into a recession or something.
Any concern that you might be wrong about this and the Fed might get behind the curve, which is one of the things that some of your colleagues are concerned about, getting behind the curve?
Well, we're certainly inflation hawks here, and we do keep an eye out for that. It's just that has not been the story of the last 5 years. Is inflation's been too low. Inflation, PCE core inflation, is still only 1.6% year over year. So you're really looking at pretty low inflation numbers still. I think that's partly because of the global environment that we're in, Japan and Europe also with very low inflation rates. So I just think as much as I want to keep inflation under control, that just has not been the problem in recent times, and I think we can continue to have very moderate rate increases, do this balance sheet thing, and that would be a good way to run policy going forward.
Jim Bullard of the St. Louis Federal Reserve, thanks for joining us again on Fox Business and foxbusiness.com.
Well, thanks for having me.